Jenny, thanks for sitting with us this morning. I am Nikki Lunsford with the Ball State Middletown Research Project. We're studying social services and what they're doing in our community and how that's changed over time. We're at the United Way office on the 3rd floor at 400 North High Street. The date is April 5th, 2019. So Jenny, I'm sure you never thought you'd be president and head of United Way in Delaware County.
Never.
So tell me a little bit about your background, your life story, and what brought you to this position.
Well, if you'd asked me in 3rd grade, I would have told you I was going to be a detective. But that's not where life took me. I got my degree in speech communications from Ball State University and became a communications consultant. So I was writing newsletters, video scripts for speeches, anything our community needed. And my primary client was a rural electric co-op there in Miami and Cass County. I lived in Peru at the time, but I was born and raised here in Muncie. And so anyway, a friend of mine who I'd done a feature on said, the Community Foundation needs a director, and I think you'd be great at that. And my first reaction was like, ugh, ask people for money? No, thank you. No. That is not interesting to me at all.
Right.
But I learned what they really needed was somebody to help tell their story. And what I learned was when you tell your community story and you tell it with donors and you tell their story, you can really inspire a lot of giving. And so that's what I did. I was the director of the Community Foundation for Miami County for 2 years. And as much as I loved it and loved that community, I really missed home. And my husband was commuting back to Ball State University. He'd been running Grissom Air Museum and found that he loved teaching more than keeping history, more than keeping history. And so he was commuting for 2 years. And we put our house on the market. It was time to come home, and my alma mater needed a fundraiser. So I was the director of annual giving for 3 years and then moved over to major gift work for the College of Applied Sciences and Technology.
At Ball State University.
At Ball State University. And I loved it. But I missed that community connection and finding a donor who had great aspirations for the community and pairing it with the needs of the community and making really great things happen. And lo and behold, United Way needed a CEO. And I put my hat in the ring, and lucky for me, I got the job. So I've been here for 5.5 years.
That's a great tale to bring you back home. And
it is so exciting to get to really make a difference in people's lives in the community I was born and raised in. It's a place of privilege, and I am so happy to be here. But I never would have thought I wanted to be a fundraiser. I mean, and it's funny because people go to school for that now. If I give a presentation at a conference, I'll say, I know, like most of the people in the room, I never wanted to be a fundraiser. I can't say that anymore. So, yeah, it's really evolved over time.
Interesting. Well, how have the services that United Way provides changed over the past 20 years?
Well, one of the things that really has changed over the past 20 years is our capacity to do work in the community. Back in 2000, 2008, when your husband was our campaign chair, we were raising $2.8 million. Now we're raising 1.5. So it has changed dramatically as industry has changed, factories have left, businesses have left. The capacity of the community to give has declined. But what hasn't declined is people's heart for the work and the willingness to help. The needs have increased dramatically. So in Delaware County right now, 21% of households live in poverty and qualify for public assistance. In addition to that, 27% are what we call ALICE. They are asset limited, income constrained, and employed. These are working families. They're working hard, super hard, 2 and 3 jobs to just meet their basic budget, but they're barely meeting it. They make just a little too much to qualify for any kind of public assistance, but not enough to set aside any savings for asset building, personal development, like for their education, or to set aside anything for a safety net. So these families are living one crisis away from poverty. And those are the families we are really focused on helping right now, our ALICE families. One of the ways we've changed over time is how we go about doing our work. So we went to the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation and learned how to hold what we call listen and learn sessions. Harwood calls them community conversations. But in reality, we're not really talking. We're asking questions and we're listening to and learning from the community. And after so many sessions, we theme out what we keep hearing, what keeps coming to the surface as the community's hope and aspiration, what keeps coming to the surface as challenges families are facing, and what people's ideas are for overcoming those obstacles and getting to the community's ideals. And we use that information to inform our decision making, our strategic planning, everything that we do here. So what we kept hearing from our ALICE families was education was a priority for them. Many lamented that they hadn't taken better advantage of their own education. Many were worried about the education of their children. Some, because of their own life circumstances, lacked the confidence that they would know what was the best opportunity for their kiddos. And so they were asking us, what's a high-quality child care center look like? What should I be looking for my child's safety and security at a child care center? What can I do to get my kid ready for kindergarten? Because I keep hearing that's an important thing.
Absolutely.
Like everyone, they want the best for their child. Mm-hmm. So we started looking at that information and bringing it back to our board. And the board said, if our community keeps telling us that education is the priority, and that was across the whole community. We're talking to CEOs, we're doing man-on-the-street interviews, we're talking to the clients of agencies we fund and clients of agencies we didn't fund. The board said, if education's our community's priority, that's where we need to put the bulk of our investment. So we make competitive grants. Every 2 years, we select funded partners. Through that process, we zero in on education, and over 50% of our funding is going to educational programs. The other piece of it is we know that if we're really going to change our community, we've got to do something that's really innovative. So where do we pair this public knowledge with expert knowledge and get to innovation? And what we heard from experts at Ball State University and from National Campaign for Grade Level Reading is that grade level reading is the single greatest predictor of a child's success in school and life.
Yes, it is.
So we realized that if kiddos are learning how to read up to third grade and they're transitioning in that third grade year to read to learn,
yes.
If they don't make that transition, they fall behind in every subject. They may have been doing really great with math, but at the point at which they get story problems and they can't read and comprehend the words around those numbers and know what to do with them, they're going to fall behind in math and every subject, right?
Yep.
So it's critical, and that's where we really put our focus. So what are the barriers, particularly for ALICE families? Well, we know nationally that 80% of kids living in low-income households are not reading at grade level. And if nearly half of Delaware County's households are low income, this is where we can turn our community around. Not tomorrow. It's going to take a long time to really rebuild this, but we want to make sure our kiddos are on track for success in school and life. And so we've built our whole fundraising strategy and our investment strategy around how to help kids read at grade level. So if you look at our funding, it's across a cradle to career and beyond continuum. And we're really zeroed in, are kids born healthy? Do they have access to high quality childcare? And let's think about those ALICE families for a minute. They don't qualify for child care vouchers, but child care is one of the most expensive things in their budget. So United Way dollars help provide scholarships for those ALICE children to have high quality child care experiences so mom and dad can keep working and their families can keep working and they can stay in a high quality environment where they're going to be on target for kindergarten readiness. So Are they having access to high quality childcare? Are they on target to be ready for kindergarten? Once they're in school, do they have out of school learning opportunities? Because we know what happens after school is super critical. We know that in the summertime, kiddos have summer learning loss, right? So we've got to make sure that those low income kids that don't get to go on summer vacations or camp opportunities or have boxes of Amazon books delivered to their door all summer long, that they have those same kinds of learning opportunities through the summer. So all of that is very impactful in making sure kids are reading at grade level when they get back to school. And then once they are reading at grade level, what happens next? Are they thriving in middle school? Are they on target for graduation and beyond? And then what happens outside of the school day too? If they're going home to dysfunction and chaos because of the stress and strain of being in a low-income household, what can we do to provide wraparound services to their families to help eliminate some of those burdens and barriers so their chance of success is even more important? The funded partners that have been traditional funded partners with United Way that have provided for basic needs, I will tell you, many of them got nervous when we landed on this grade level reading goal because they didn't see where they fit in right away. Yes. But we helped them understand that adverse childhood experiences actually alter the architecture of a child's brain, particularly in those early formative years.
Those first 5 years.
Critical. So we want to make sure that we're addressing homelessness because that impacts kids. The largest homeless population, children. So we want to make sure that they have access to shelter and that we're providing supports for their adults to get where they need to go in life and have a home for that child. We want to make sure that they're not food insecure. A hungry child cannot learn.
Nope.
So adverse childhood experiences are being addressed with our funding as well. And it's all part of this big continuum.
How do you find the children?
How do we find the children? It's really not hard to find the children.
It is not.
It is not. I will tell you, we are working in schools where there are 93% of the students on free and reduced lunch. Now, how do we tailor programs and things to make sure that we're getting to them? That can be a challenge. So we started an after-school reading club to help bring volunteers in that are there because they want to be. And they interact with these kiddos and help make sure that they're reading at grade level, that they're comprehending what they're reading, that they're going to be on target to pass our state's reading proficiency exam, I-READ. This was a great program, and it is a great program. It's running at Longfellow Elementary still. The challenge is sometimes our low-income kiddos can't stay after school. So this fall, we're going to pilot a new program called Read United, and that will bring volunteers in during the school day, and it will work with the most at-risk students. And we're starting at Southview Elementary, where on average, 93% of their kiddos are on free and reduced lunch. So we've got the greatest need and the greatest opportunity for impact there.
And the lowest ISTEP scores and the lowest
kindergarten readiness.
Yes.
And
Right.
Absolutely. And then once we test it and kind of work out the bugs, then we'll look at the other schools we can expand into where we have similar statistics.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Those are what's going to happen when you get K through 3, but what about 0 to 5?
Right.
How are you finding them at that early critical level?
That is super challenging as well. And because we have such a great network of partners and nonprofits, we're able to help get our resources to those families too. So when they come into the YWCA and they have a child that's under the age of 5, the YWCA has forms for those moms to get their child registered for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is a program we're running directly out of our office, and it's a fantastic program because it delivers a book a month to that child's home. Okay, well, they're at a shelter. We're getting it to them at that shelter. And at the point at which they are more financially stable and ready to move on to their next home, we make sure that address change is there. We have a beautiful partnership with the U.S. Postal Service here in Delaware County.
Good.
And when those books can't get delivered because families moved and we don't know where they've gone, they bring those books back to us and we get to work. So I get to be a detective sometimes and try to help find where these families ended up and try to get that address changed so the kiddo can get the books that they are so deserving of. And then the post office helps us resend them. So it's been a really great partnership with agencies, with local government, with service providers. We've got a fantastic network and a coalition of 30 partners that sit around the table and say, what are the barriers we're seeing? What are the challenges we're facing? And how can we work together to overcome them? We've set a goal that by 2024, all third graders will be reading at grade level. So we are in the boat together and we are rowing together. When you look at Delaware County's I-READ pass rates overall, and it's challenging because you're looking at a different cohort of kids each year, right?
Yes.
Overall, we're in that 80% to 90% pass rate, right? It looks pretty good. But when you really drill down into those low-income schools, you see that there are really some kids that are just not getting there. And that's where we focus our resources and our efforts. And that's where we have to zero in as a community.
Yes. So is our county iRead rate done as an average of all the schools, or do you do it building by building?
We are tracking it building by building.
Good.
As well as an average of all the schools, so we can see where we really need to focus in. And a great story would be Gaston at Westdell Elementary. They had a dramatic dip in their iRead results, like 60% of their kiddos passed one year. And we picked up the phone and called the principal and said, what can we do to help you? Can we bring reading club to your school? So we helped them build an after-school reading club library. We took them snacks. We helped get their volunteers trained up and ready to go, and then they said, we've got this United Way, you can step away. And so we stepped away. The school's still running it. It's doing wonderfully well. The kiddos are doing wonderfully well. So that's how it should work. United Way now needs to be kind of a bridge. When there's a gap and we see a gap, we kind of come in with the resources we have and say, how can we help? What can we do to support you? And then at the point at which the work can continue on their own, or there's an agency that's come up and says, I can do this, then we can step back and step aside and let others carry that work so we can go on to the next gap or the next barrier that needs to be busted through.
That's exciting. Now, you mentioned going to Gaston. Is that still Delaware County?
Yes.
So, but I think, if I'm not badly mistaken, you've got some surrounding counties that are starting to lose their funding to the point where they cannot exist. How is that going to impact United Way in Delaware County?
The beautiful thing about being part of an international network is neighbors lean in and help each other out. And we've all been there. We've all had struggles, right? Our United Way has seen diminishing returns and has really worked to create an impact agenda that people are inspired by and want to be a part of. You know, we envision a community that doesn't need a United Way, and we go for that goal, because we all want to live in a community that doesn't need a United Way. So at the end of the day, if our goal is to work ourselves out of business, people want to be a part of that, right?
Yes.
And so we have really, really rebuilt Delaware County's United Way, and we have an opportunity now to help others do the same. So struggling United Ways we've been working with, an example would be the Henry County United Fund. They're not technically a United Way, and they were having some struggles and challenges. And so they said, hey, United Way of Delaware County, it looks like you hit goal. Can you come give us some tips and tricks and help us out? And so I met with the board a number of times, and as we talked, they realized there were resources with the United Way network that they just weren't able to access as a United Fund. And so that board decided to dissolve, and we are now serving 2 counties, Henry and Delaware. And it is a challenge because it is more work. The capacity of the staff and the dollars in, it's not a merger. We didn't get anything in this marriage. So we've got to rebuild from the ground up there. But it's super exciting because, again, you've got a community that, while factories have closed and campaign has gone down, the carrying power of the people of Henry County is still there and still strong. They have an incredible day of action with over 600 volunteers annually. I mean, that kind of community spirit is really going to be able to propel that community forward. So right now we're in the process of listening to and learning from the people of Henry County, and we are committed that it will be managed as a special project, that what's raised in Henry County will be invested in Henry County work, and what's raised in Delaware County will be invested in Delaware County work, because we know our communities care about their community and want those resources to stay there. But we also know that there are opportunities to condense back office operations. The more we can reduce our overhead, the more we have for impact. And it's a no-brainer. One office, one copier, one executive, one staff. It reduces that overhead cost, so there's more to make a difference in Henry County now.
Sounds exciting. What are the key goals of your organization, and what challenges it trying to address? You've mentioned some of them.
So yes, so one of our key goals obviously is fundraising every year. We really need about $1.4 to $1.5 million to make it work for Delaware County and really have that level of support that we need to make a difference and be highly organizationally effective. Our overhead is around 18%, which is really great. Better Business Bureau says anything under like 32, 35% is good. So we are really holding the line on our overhead to maximize what we do for impact, but that's a challenge.
Yes.
You've got to do more with less, and you've got to be creative, and you've got to find ways to innovate, and that can be a real challenge. I have an incredible team helping me with this work. We are a staff of 7. We have an intern that comes in the springtime. So in the spring, we're a staff of 8, which is super exciting. But now that we're adding more territory, we're doing more with less. So how do we get to a point where we've got the capacity to take on more? And we know at the point at which we do, we can really take off. So one of our primary goals is that fundraising goal annually. It's daunting, but the community has been incredible in rising to the challenge. And these last 2 years, we've surpassed goal. So it's
celebrate.
It's super exciting, but it's also just an ongoing challenge because everybody wants to bump that number up, and we've got to be realistic. What can we realistically achieve here this year? So that is definitely an ongoing goal. And then the grade level reading goal that by 2024, all kiddos are going to be reading at grade level. Our community has established a kindergarten readiness goal that by 2020, all kiddos are going to be ready for kindergarten. Well, if those kids are all ready, then they're going to be reading at 3rd grade. So we've got this integrated, streamlined approach that we have a lot of compassionate, caring community members getting together and trying to achieve. But those are our 2 primary benchmarks.
So when we talk about change, right now you're working on about 1.4-ish, and you're meeting that goal. But I think we talked earlier that 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was a different scene.
It was.
What was it like then? And then what did the dwindling funds, is that what led you to the listen and learn? So that you could do more with less. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So back in 2008 and beyond, United Ways were really set up to be kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval for not-for-profits. United Ways were set up to be the good housekeeping seal of approval for not-for-profits. So we were funding agencies unrestricted. They had dollars to do whatever they wanted to do with that would help them serve the community. And there wasn't a lot of accountability for it. There would be annual visits and site visits, and they would be vetted. But we weren't really reporting out to the community what those outcomes were, what those dollars actually did. And we weren't being super strategic. We had United Way agencies. They were our agencies that we looked out for and gave money to, right? That has completely changed. And it had to. There was this little invention called the World Wide Web. And you can go online and you can search any not-for-profit you want to support. So you don't need a United Way to give your dollars to and have them vet those agencies, right?
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing. Innovation is a wonderful thing. So why are we relevant in this day and age if we're not the good housekeeping seal of approval for these entities? And what are we really bringing that's value added to those organizations? So we've got very strategic in focusing in on programs. And instead of just blanket funding agencies, we funded programs that were going to help a specific need in the community. And that is serving our Alice families. We didn't know they were Alice quite at the time, but we knew that there were increasing families with struggling financial needs. So what programs at your agency are directly impacting that individual or that family? And what are you going to do about it? And what can you show us has been done by investing United Way support in that program? So we became a little more strategic, but we realized that we had a room full of very well-intentioned, very smart, very successful people sitting around the table and making those decisions. But did we really know what Alice families were facing? what they were dealing with on a day-to-day basis, their voice was missing from the process and from the boardroom.
You were doing to rather than listening
With.
to do with.
Exactly. We were doing to instead of with. And so that is where the innovation really came in. And when we listened to and learned from our Alice families, we were able to pair that public knowledge and their experiences with expert knowledge and research and data to make a real informed strategy that we feel could really turn the trajectory of this community forever.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting.
So, in your view, what are the root causes of these changes? We know that factories have left. What are the root? Is it the opiate epidemic? Is it education? What are the root causes, and have those causes changed?
So I don't think we're ever going out there and saying we've found the root cause of generational poverty and we're going to break the cycle of generational poverty forever because of this one thing. This is a thing we can do to try to turn the tide and change the trajectory of our community. But the root causes for generational poverty for our increase in Alice family are multifold. So we used to have really high-paying jobs in our community that required very little education. So folks could go in, get a great job, and get great pay, and provide for their family. And when those jobs dried up, those folks didn't leave. They didn't follow the job for the most part. And there wasn't anything that filled its place that quite fit that same need in that same way. And so suddenly there's a greater need for educated employees. And we heard it from CEOs when we listened to and learned from them that they needed more education for their candidates for positions. The other thing that I think is a challenge is valuing education and a culture of education. If that hasn't been inculcated in a family, if it hasn't been needed for a career, there aren't books in the home. And just because those jobs went away, those books don't suddenly appear.
That's true.
So it has to be kind of a community-wide shift in thinking. And we all have to be in this together. And I think that's something else that has changed, that in recent years we are really seeing the importance and the return on investment for kindergarten readiness for grade level reading. That if we put our resources in this together and if we lock arms and are all in this together, all sectors of the community, we could really, really impact families. And it's what they want.
Yes.
It's what they recognize they need.
Have you seen in the past, I know that my education background has led me to understand that a lot of times families in generational poverty tend to distrust the education system because they've had negative consequences when they're growing up.
That's exactly
So is that something we're addressing too? Do you see that?
It is one of our big challenges and a barrier to success with our goal. So it is something that we are working on and trying to find ways to build trust and engage families early. And I think that's one of the things, building trust and engaging families before they're pregnant, before they're having kiddos, but getting them involved in the schools. I think that's one of the exciting things about Ball State's partnership with Muncie Community Schools. I think we have some greater potential for overall community engagement and the message that we have one Muncie and we're better together. I think families are starting to see there are more resources and opportunities than they might have seen at first. But it is a challenge. One program that we fund that I see doing incredible work is MP3. It is a Ball State program. It's run with Ball State students. It's at Longfellow Elementary. And to see the family engagement and how that's done, because we're all starting from a place of hope there, right? What do you hope for your child? And let's build a plan around that.
Help me and explain MP3.
MP3 is an after-school reading program, ultimately with the goal that that kiddo is going to pass the iRead test.
And this is different than the book club.
This is very different from the book club because we start with families when they come to kindergarten, and we follow those families all the way through. There's a family engagement piece to this program that is critical. And there are things that are happening on the weekends and after school where these kids are getting out of their neighborhood. They're getting out of their school. They are going to campus and seeing Ball State. It's amazing to hear the number of families and children that have never been to Ball State.
True.
We're not a big city.
No.
But there are obstacles and barriers in their mind. And there's an intimidation factor sometimes, right? And
Yes.
so when kiddos get on campus and they go to the planetarium or they go to the art museum or they hear a concert, what a wonderful horizon expanding experience that is. And that's what MP3 is all about. It's pairing those resources and giving these kiddos a phenomenal experience. But better than that, they're bringing students from the Teachers College in. These are our future educators.
Yes.
And they're helping them understand how you educate a child within the context of their community, of their background and upbringing. We're all people. We all have hopes and aspirations for our children. We all want to live in a strong, thriving community.
And we all come to our beliefs honestly.
Right.
So we need to honor that. And that's what it sounds like MP3 is doing.
Exactly. And it helps those kiddos that maybe had an entirely different upbringing or experience be able to relate to all walks of life. So no matter what school they land in on graduation, they're going to be better equipped to serve those children and their families.
Yes. So what challenges have you had in finding staff or expertise for your organization? Have those challenges changed over time?
Yes, they have changed over time. Right now, I think Delaware County has like some 1,200 not-for-profits, right?
Yes.
We put the not in not-for-profit, so we don't have a lot of money to pay people. So there's one challenge, right?
Yeah.
And we're all competing for really highly qualified, competent staff members. So the competition there can be kind of fierce in getting fully staffed
True.
and making sure your agency has the resources that it needs to serve the populations it's serving. And one of the challenges, I think, too, is who's going into this field and these careers, right? So I know at child care centers, there's a real struggle to get qualified employees to work there. Not a lot of people are going into that as a study and being prepared for it. So how do we help build that pipeline of employees for the future? I'm very blessed. I have an incredible team right now. And it's taking a while for a lot of our agencies to build our team. And there's turnover. People get discouraged, the low pay, the challenges.
I was going to ask because I know that's a problem with the child care industry. We
Sure.
don't pay them enough, and once they get qualified, then they move on to a public school system where they can make a higher income.
Yeah. It's a real challenge.
Is your
isn't it?
staff smaller now than it was?
It is smaller than it was. We are very strategic with our grants, and our local foundations are currently covering our overhead. So more money can go to our impact work, both our direct service impact work that we're doing in our office and those funded partners. So it's really incredible. But back in the day, we could get grant funding for special projects and initiatives and hire a staff person that would oversee that and take care of that. So we've kind of shifted how we have structured some of our funding here, and that's impacted our staff size as well. Right now, our Campaign for Grade Level Reading coordinator came to us through the AmeriCorps program, and it was a wonderful opportunity from United Way Worldwide that we could hire a young person through AmeriCorps, and it's like the Peace Corps, but they do service here in America, and they live at the poverty level, so we cannot pay them much. United Way Worldwide, AmeriCorps was not paying them much, but they had this wonderful resume building experience. Well, obviously we had some turnover with that, and then we were able to secure a grant and a little more money and maybe a stipend we could put toward their housing to help keep them here. So we had an AmeriCorps student that left us, and then we were able to have a professional come in and do the job for a couple of years. And of course, she was ready because she came to us first as AmeriCorps, had an educational stipend, so off she went to pursue her master's. And now, the search begins again. So now we have a gentleman running the program, and we're so excited to have him. But again, a grant-funded position, so we're kind of on pins and needles,
right.
and that grant doesn't fully fund that position. But it's our bold goal, and our board is determined that if we have to dip into any kind of operating reserves to keep that position so we can keep our work and our focus, we will.
Always a tight line. So what's your budget now? And what are the sources of your funding besides campaigning? And I've heard some community foundations, but you can go on about those. And then how do you gain access to those sources of financial support?
That's a great question. So our State Association of United Ways approaches Lilly Endowment annually and gets a grant that they then can award out to local United Ways. So that way Lilly's not being touched by 54 United Ways asking for money. There is one entity that's coordinating this. It's been a really wonderful process. So we use that grant to help some of our programming as well as some of our overhead costs. George and Frances Ball Foundation and Ball Brothers Foundation are our two primary funders locally for our overhead. And then we go to corporations, we go to individual givers, and we look for that impact support that we need. We still run workplace campaigns, which has been one of the tenets of a United Way. Back when we were community chests, when we first started in 1925, and Lloyd Kimbrough started that fundraising effort. It's a wonderful thing. You can go into a workplace, you can talk to the employees, you can see if they are interested, and they can give through payroll deductions. So it's a very easy give for them. They don't have to write a check. They don't have to whip out their credit card. It's an easy thing. They never even see the money hit their paycheck. It just automatically goes, and the company coordinates that for us. Many companies give corporate gifts or offer incentive matches for their employees giving. So that's incredibly powerful too. But that's a change that's happened over time. Workplace campaigns have diminished. Back in the day when we were raising $2.8 million, we would have some employers or general managers at factories say, here's your pledge form, here's how much you're giving. This is your fair share. You just sign it. That's not really sustainable, and that burns a lot of bridges. And that's not how we want to do it. Now we really work to build relationships with donors. We really work to understand what they care about in our community and how we align with it so we can work together on an issue. So that has been a real shift, and it's one that we're still working to make. Because United Ways had these workplace campaigns, we just went around every year and asked for money, and we didn't necessarily go back and say what that money did or show the outcomes from the programs that benefited or tell the stories of the individuals that are on the right track now because you gave that $20 out of your paycheck. Together, that was 2.8, and look what it did. We didn't do that very well. So now we are working really hard to build a full calendar year where we've got multiple touch points and are making sure people understand that their dollars really made a difference. And there are real people here locally, thousands of them, that are able to go to work, have their kiddo go to a high-quality child care center, or have an amazing summer camp experience with AIM. These kinds of things that they wouldn't necessarily know if we didn't share those individual stories.
Do you see part of that change riding alongside what we call the millennial groups? And I don't want to label a group, but we know that the baby boomers tend to be money motivated and hierarchically motivated, whereas my children, the millennials, they tend to be more, they want outcome-based.
Right.
They want data. Is that what you're seeing? We
are seeing that. And they want to be stewarded for those smaller gifts. You might think, you really need to pull out all your stewardship effort for your $10,000 and up donors, or your $1,000 and up donors, or your $500 and up. You might, as a fundraiser, kind of tier how you're communicating to folks and making sure those stories are getting out to them. Well, a baby boomer that just gave you $5 with their cell phone, they want that same touch point too. They want that same connection. The other thing that those millennials want are engagement with clients. They want to get into those agencies and volunteer and be a part of that work. They want to be advocates. There's a drive to help shape and change things. And that's the lucky thing for United Way. Our mantra is give, advocate, volunteer. So we've got engagement opportunities on all three levels. And we recognize that we have to engage our millennial community members in this volunteer work. And we've really seen that flourish in the last couple of years. We had over 900 volunteers for our day of action, and many of them came from Ball State University, and many of them were millennials. So it's an opportunity for them to kind of touch and feel and see what is really happening in the community and what the needs are. We vet those projects through those nonprofits and make sure that they're going to tell their story. So when the volunteers come in, they might be painting a wall or trimming bushes. They may not actually be engaging with clients at an abuse shelter, but that executive director is going to make sure they know what that actually means for their budget, that these are projects they can't afford to get to without this kind of help. That director is going to make sure they know what it means for the clients to come into a really cozy, homey, safe place with their family, and that they're going to understand what that experience is like for a woman to leave in the night with whatever belongings she and her child can carry,
and barefooted and
get
scared to death.
Shelter. And ultimately what that can mean for our community, that kind of support is there for them. And when you have that kind of narrative along with that experience, I find that millennials are ready and hungry to do more. And they're ready to advocate for more. They want to make sure that there are resources for those shelters. And those resources are in danger, So how do we make sure we are doing everything we can to advocate and make sure their voices are heard?
Very good. So how is this organization impacted by local, state, and federal regulations, if at all? And how have those changed?
They have changed. We had this whole change up with tax credits for philanthropy. And I'm nervous about that. I'll be very honest. We're really going to see, what happens next. But I really believe in my heart of hearts, most people aren't giving for a tax break. Most people are giving because they've got a heart for giving. And those are our steady, renewing donors every year. So there have been some changes. Maybe we don't need to receipt a gift under $250 legally, but we're going to do it anyway. Right. We're going to make sure that they see that gift got here. It's being used, and here's a success story from what that gift made possible. We have a rigorous accountability to our international network. So United Way Worldwide requires us to file reports annually. We file the Database 2 survey, which tracks how many donors at what level, if we have any kind of affinity groups or special interests and what they're doing in our community, how many volunteers we had and how many hours they worked. And they're tracking all of this from every United Way across the globe so they can see what impact that's really having organizationally and what community interest is in the organization overall and in the brand, right? But they also want to know, did we file our audit? Did we have a board that reviewed the best practices as they have identified it to make sure that we're organizationally effective? And they want to see what we're doing for impact. We have a rigorous impact report that we fill out every year too. So is the money that we've captured going to what needs to have that support, and what's the outcome of that? So we're reporting that to United Way Worldwide as well.
That has to be positive for what you're doing in your office to be able to show the staff and say, let's keep going. Is that, how do you use that data?
So we use it with our board, but we also use it to track where we are, and they've got a whole kind of scoring system. When I started, we were a 2A, which means nothing to you, but I really wanted to be a 2B, and so I was like, what are we going to do to get to be a 2B? And now we want to be a 2C, so what are we going to do to be a 2C? And so we're tracking those results and what it takes to get there. Because the end of the day is, it doesn't matter what 2A or 2B or 2C means. What matters is, what did we do that's innovative, that's actually addressing needs and getting money where it needs to go and making a difference in people's lives? Is our ALICE population growing or shrinking because they're becoming more middle class and more financially stable? One of the challenges our community has is, as factories have left, as a lot of our high-paying companies like Jarden left, Ardagh left, those executive jobs left our community. So what's coming in? If we don't have new companies willing to kind of take on those kinds of roles in a community, Well, we've had incredible growth in restaurants and shops and service industry, which is great. We need those things, but they don't have a lot of high-paying jobs. So how do we work to support those families and get there? Well, if we're a 2C, we can do it.
So you want it's just to be better, just to be streamlined, and that's
organizationally effective.
Yes.
At every turning point. What's it about? How is this helping Alice families? How is this helping kids read at grade level? That's our first question. And secondary to that, because those issues were informed by our community members, how does this meet our community's aspirations for the community we want to be?
Much more streamlined and focused. You mentioned two things I want to go back to, and one is the Alice population dwindling? As you said, the best thing is to put us out of business. Do you see any change? You've been working on this for how many years? Specifically, it was about 2014 that Rutgers University partnered with United Way Worldwide to do an assessment of what did that 2008 recession do to our communities and what does that look demographically. And so that initial report came out and it was startling. I mean, it confirmed what we knew, what we were seeing at our agencies and in our own work. It confirmed it, right? So I was super, super hopeful that when they refreshed the data, we would see our Alice numbers shrink. Our Alice number grew, but our poverty number shrunk by 1%, and our Alice number grew. So I'm thinking, could it be that we're seeing some progression here? Yes, because some poverty moved up, some Alice moved out, but we need to keep going. So yes, I think that sounds very positive. The other thing I want to ask, because we're in 2019 and President Trump has changed a lot of things in the business world. But the tax credit, just for the record, please expand on the tax credit and how that's impacting our organizations.
I don't really feel like I'm equipped to fully respond to that or fully answer that. I think we're going to see some trend lines here in the next couple of years, and I'm going to watch it carefully and see. The tax credit and the way you can write off your charitable gifts on taxes changed, and I think that could impact some larger gifts and the way it impacts things. But I also think people have a caring heart. And if they're loyal, caring givers, it's not about what your tax credit looks like for giving philanthropically, right? It's about what your dollars can do. I also know that some companies are doing a lot better and making more money, and some individual, small businesses, bookkeepers and little bookkeeping firms and that sort of thing have seen kind of an uptick in their income and have gotten money back. And so they're doing more philanthropically because they have a little more to work with. So in the end, I think it's going to wash out, and I think it's going to be okay. But it is something we have to track as not-for-profits, and we have to watch.
All right. So a question that I kind of missed was, how has your organization's relationship with your clients changed?
Well, one change is our building used to be located right next to the Social Security Administration building. And so we would get a lot of walk-in traffic because they thought they were going to Social Security. And it gave us an opportunity to interact with folks that needed help and to help them find additional resources beyond that. So now that we're in the Star Bank building on the 3rd floor here on 400 North High Street, it's less walk-in traffic, clearly. But I would say our relationship with the clients is much more strategic. Our clients are those 3rd graders and their families. And so we are very intentional in engaging through the schools and through the agencies with families and bringing some of those services that we're providing directly, which we didn't used to do, to them.
Well, and did I hear that the Listen and Learn would almost be a more focused, strategic way to interact with the clients than just the walk-in? The walk-in was random.
Right.
Whereas this is a planned, concerted effort.
It is a planned, concerted effort. So we are working with great intentionality to turn outward and to focus with the people that are really going to be impacted most with the dollars that are invested.
Very good. So now let's talk about connections that you have with other local community. I can hear them because I'm from here and I know who you're talking about. But please, talk about some of your local faith communities and your faith communities, your partnerships, some of your other nonprofit organizations that you're connected with. How do these work? How does this integrate in almost a sociogram?
Absolutely. So in the 2017 campaign, we recognized that we looked around and we thought, we're pretty white. We got a lot of white people that are sitting at this table. And it's not that we don't have partners who are representative of our entire community, right?
Right.
It's just that we don't have them engaged here at the table. And so we went to the Coalition of Concerned Clergy, and Watasha Barnes Griffin said, I will help you. I am going to step up and help you really diversify. And it was beautiful because when I started, I had a similar kind of feeling with my board of directors, and I went to Watasha and I said, can you help me? Can you help me connect with folks?
And if I might interject, Watasha is the director of the YWCA in town.
That is correct.
Okay.
Watasha is the director of the YWCA in town, and she is an incredible leader. She's absolutely inspirational.
She is.
And if she says she's going to do a thing, it
happens.
It's done. I can always count on her. So she has been fantastic at helping us connect with the community on the whole. And so she connected us with the Coalition of Concerned Clergy, and our 2017 campaign chair, Casey Stanley, and I went to talk with them. And Casey was very candid. He said, first we've got to raise the money to do the work. But this isn't about just coming to you and asking you for money. This is how can we be better partners, and how can we work together to get more done for this community? And how can we make sure our work is fully representational? And so I have so appreciated the gentlemen that were at the table at that time. Willisha Scaife, who has been integral with MP3, and her husband is a pastor, Robert, also joined us and talked about what's happening with United Way in the community and the impact she's seen through that program. Watasha was able to speak to what's happening at the YWCA. I mean, it was a great conversation and a very candid, very real conversation. We need everybody's help. This only works with everybody at the table. So that was one of the really beautiful things in the 2017 campaign. We had this day of giving where the churches passed the plate to help United Way with its grade level reading goal, with the real message of let's break the cycle of generational poverty forever, really resonating with them. So I met with Pastor Andre Mitchell of Deliverance Temple, and he is such an incredible leader and a member of the Coalition of Concerned Clergy. And so he's going to go back to the clergy and ask if I can come do a listen and learn session with them, and they can see how it works and then hopefully get their congregations involved. We want to make sure every voice is heard in informing the work that we're doing.
I would love to be there too. I would just love to be there and hear and
listen. We need note takers, Nikki, so
and I'm
you
good
can
at
do
that. All right, so what are some other partnerships that you have where you're actually working in? You mentioned the schools.
Oh, absolutely. So we have a coalition of about 30 partners, and it represents folks from all across the community. We have people from the Department of Health, from Meridian Health Services, from the hospital, people from the schools, people from the child care centers, funded and unfunded partners that gather around the table. They are in the trenches. They're doing the work. They see what the challenges are and what we need to address. And so it's incredible. We really have to have the support of all sectors of the community. And by support, that doesn't necessarily mean they're just giving to campaign or that they're giving to campaign at all. If they're giving their time, their talent, their expertise, their knowledge is really helping to take the work to the next level.
And as I'm looking out the window and seeing City Hall, your neighbor, how do you work with them? Do you have some political partnerships? Do you have, or is that just kind of a separate, they're glad you're doing what you're doing, you're glad they're doing what they're doing? How does that work?
They've been incredible partners. So Day of Caring, they have been our annual sponsor of that and paid for the Day of Caring t-shirts that our volunteers wear.
Is that the mayor's office or
that
the Chamber of Commerce?
That is the mayor's office. That is the mayor's office, but the Chamber of Commerce has also been an incredible partner. Our very first day of action Action, they were there and said, how can we help? And they engaged the Muncie Young Professionals group. And oftentimes they will come and volunteer together, which has been great team building for both. It's been a really wonderful experience to pull the whole city together through Day of Action. And with President Mern's arrival at Ball State, he releases the faculty, staff, and students to be a participant in our annual Day of Action. So we have incredible support from the university. In fact, 600 some volunteers came from the university this last year. So City of Muncie's been a tremendous supporter. Terry Whitt Bailey, who is in community development and oversees that work, is on our board of directors. So we try to keep close relationships with the government as well.
Excellent. Jenny, thank you for your time. Do you have anything to add?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Well,
I hope I said everything you needed me to say. I covered everything.
I think that you filled us in well. Thank you for your time.
Good. You're very welcome.
We'll be talking.
Thank you.